Chris Broussard. How you doing, sir?
Man, I'm great. I'm excited to be on with you. It's
Oh,
always
no.
good to chop it up with you, man.
Always good, always good. And as always, I don't really want to talk to you about, basketball per se, because I know that's what you're always talking about.
Right.
And you kind of like, we always do something different, you know what I mean? So that you'll get a chance to talk to about all the time. But everything good with you?
Yeah, man, everything's great. Family's good. It's been a great summer. So I got no complaints.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump right into it because we have a long history of collaborating. What you do with your King movement, and I participated in quite a few of your events, and you participated in quite a few of my panels. We spoke in different churches in Harlem when I had the fatherhood panels, and that panel that we did during All-Star Weekend in New York was so special. The Black Lives Matter panel, and it was right after Eric Garner was killed, and we had the big Black Lives Matter panel there. We had 2,500 young Black and brown young men.
That was awesome.
It was, it was Lonzo Mourning. It was you, Isaiah Thomas. It was, that was an amazing event. So we've done a lot together. The first
I remember going to Rikers Island.
Oh yeah. We went to Rikers Island. And the crazy part of that is I asked you, because that's not really everybody don't really jump to go to Rikers Island. So I asked you, and you agreed before I could even tell you all the details. I was like, wait, I got a whole sales pitch. I got a whole lot of like, oh, it's cool. Just tell me what time, tell me when, and I'm there. Yeah. So I always, had a lot of respect for you for that. You even asked that many questions.
Yeah, well, when I lived in Cleveland, before I was covering the NBA, I was covering high school sports as a writer. So I had more time. I used to go to the juvenile detention center in Cleveland and minister to the inmates.
Mm-hmm.
I would go, they would just send me into the quad. It'd be about 50 to 75 guys in there. And I would just gather them up and start talking to them about the Lord and other things. And I found that was a great place to really speak to young men.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, they could see that they're on the wrong path, right? Because they're in jail. Right. Two, they were glad to have anybody come speak to them. So they were, you had their ear, like they really were all ears and they're listening to you. And then three, they were young enough that if they win, usually most of them would get out and they could really turn their life around.
Right.
And so that's why, and that's what you want for those young brothers. So yeah, I remember that vividly. It's a shame because you go there and you see all these guys in prison.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, hopefully you can say something that will impact them. And I know many, many guys who have made big changes. And I know obviously Malcolm X, others who've made changes in prison and come out and been, productive members of society. So that I definitely was jumped at that opportunity. And I think, it was some great stuff said. Amari Stoudemire, Styles P, Malcolm X's grandson, there. Yeah. So that was a great event.
Oh no, that was absolutely amazing, and it was so powerful, talking to and I, there's remember the MC, his name was Messiah Ramkasoon.
Yes.
He's a poet. Yeah, and he, because we did things with him at different events as well. But he had such a connection with the young people, and he kept working there. And they were still at the time where they were getting out soon, so they had another chance to kind of redeem themselves and everything like that. But then you see some of the reasons that some of them were in there, and I'm like, then that presented a different issue. Like, why are you at Rikers Island for having a little teaspoon of weed, and you end up at Rikers Island for that? You know what I mean? Like it was really an eye-opening experience to where, the message really from there, talking to young people, in different high schools, was that, the system is not set up for us. You know, so they're going to throw the book at you for the little smallest infraction, and they're not going to do that to somebody else that doesn't look like you, but to us, to me and you. You know what I mean? Black and brown people. You're gonna snatch a bag of chips, and they're gonna try to get you to plead for, you know what I mean, something, and you're gonna end up in jail. It's messed up, but that's what the system is.
I mean, one of the chief architects and voices behind mass incarceration was Joe Biden, and you look at his son Hunter and what his history with drugs, and then you understand so many black and brown brothers were being, as you said, sent to prison for, you know, having a little weed. The thing about the war on drugs, which has decimated our community, is that all the evidence shows that Americans do drugs and even sell drugs at the same rate. Like blacks are about roughly 14% of the population. We sell and use roughly 14% of the drugs.
Right.
And so that shows you, like, to have a war on drugs, you have to focus it on an area, because drugs are all over. Right. And what they've done is they focused it on the black and brown neighborhoods and poor white neighborhoods. But as you know, you went to college, they're doing more drugs. I say this, I don't have the exact evidence, right? But they're doing at least as much, and I would say more drugs on college campuses than they are in the hood and in the projects. But they focus it on the hood. So to your point, man, it's just tragic. And the thing is, that is not like that type of situation we're still hurting from. Because those brothers who were sent to jail for these minor drug infractions, their whole lives were changed. Like, who knows what you may have experienced in jail that messes up your head. But even if you don't experience something like that, you come out, your education's disrupted. Now you have a record. And so that makes everything tougher for you. And then some of the children whose fathers may have been sent to prison for something like this. Now they grew up without a father, at least for some stretch. And that man comes out of jail. It's harder for him to get a job and be the father to his, so like we are seeing, and now the kids that were raised under those circumstances, were raised without a father and don't have certain, know-how in terms of being a father because they didn't see it. So this thing, it's like a spiral that created, and we're still hurting from it now.
Well, definitely. And a lot of the panels that we did, a lot of concentrating in New York, we must have done at least 3 or 4 panels, in Harlem by itself. Yeah. And, seeing that effect that society is having on our young people. And, it's for instance, talked about the an All-Star weekend at Canaan Baptist Church, and it was right after Eric Garner was killed. If you remember, I invited Eric Garner's daughter, Emerald, to come, and I wanted to invite her just so she can feel the love from the community after the NYPD, took her father away from her. And, I didn't want her, I told her, I was like, listen, I'm not going to announce that you're there. If you don't want to speak or say anything, we can keep it on the low, keep it quiet. You can just be in the audience and just really, feel the love. And while the panel is going on, you decide that you want to say something, just give me a little signal and I'll give you the mic. And so she said, we're doing a panel. Bizzle was performing. It was amazing. And, John Wallace was there and he was talking, and Kevin Powell. And it was really an amazing panel. Yeah. And she gave me the signal and she said she wanted to speak. And she just told everybody kind of thank you. And that was kind of her first time really even speaking out in public. And everybody stood up and gave her a standing ovation. 2,500 young black and brown young men stand up and gave her a standing ovation. And she was like smiling. She like kind of sat back and smiled. And that was, so from that point, I, was working with her and trying to get the laws to be changed. That's what she wanted to do, so that what the police did to her father, they couldn't continue to do to other people.
Yep.
And she wanted to get the Eric Garner law passed, and that special task force that Giuliani had, with the stop and frisk and the
Yep.
aside from the police that they had put in place. So she did all of that and pushed and got it. But the tough part was, as soon as Trump got back into office, he reversed literally everything that she fought for. Literally everything. He reinstalled everything that Giuliani already had. So the task force that killed her father, he put back in stop and frisk. He put back in all. So all of these things are all built against Black and brown people, especially concentrating in New York. And now from with her, I ended up writing her book, Finding My Voice. And we started speaking in different places, and she's telling her story and telling how she's trying to fight and encourage other. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different family members from other victims of police brutality that are trying to fight for their loved ones. So this big, amazing movement. Actually, the book is like right over my shoulder. You see right there. That's her book, Finding My Voice. And it's just so frustrating because she fought so hard for all of this to happen. She ended up losing her sister, Erica Gardner, who was really the one that was really fighting everything, all tough and doing the rallies and everything like that. But she had to take on that role. But she lost her to a heart attack. She lost her brother, her younger brother, Emery, to a heart attack. All this train of events that happened after Daniel Pantaleo killed her father. And she just recently lost her mother. Wow. And so all of this stuff happened, and I feel for her, and I, you know what I mean? It's so hard, but that's where the work that we do, that you're always a part of, that you come to immediately and support, don't even ask any questions. Yeah. It's so amazing, and the work that you do with the King movement is so amazing. And it's a passion, and I got to really salute you for all the work that you do, because not everybody wants to do that work in the community. Yeah. You want to do it at the surface level, but talk a little bit about what you do with the King movement, because it really is special.
Yeah, I mean, with the King movement, it's an acronym that stands for knowledge, inspiration, and nurture through God. And it's a national Christian men's movement. You're an honorary member, because we applaud all the work you're doing in the community. We work, like you said, we've worked together on so much. Mm-hmm. But King is for all men of all races, but we are overwhelmingly African American. And we are, like, one of my goals is we want to help the African American wing of humanity, if you will, reach its full potential in God and be what God has created us to be, enjoy the quality of life that God created us to have. And we think one thing that's important in that is building up the men, so that we can have stronger families, we can have stronger children and stronger communities, and so on and so forth. So we do a lot of work, similar to what you were doing with the fatherhood panels, but we really work with a lot of young men and older men about, helping brothers reach their full potential in God. And so that may include, work in the community, trying to help brothers, or mentoring young men. Like I said, we've gone to prisons, juvenile detention homes. We work out, sometimes evangelize out in the neighborhoods and stuff. But just anything we can do to strengthen men, particularly African American or Black men. And we do it through Christ. We feel like if we can get just the men that profess Christ to live out their faith, that right there would be a huge, benefit. And then even with the white community, trying to get those who are Christians or claim to be Christians to live out their faith as well in every area, but also in the way they treat Black and brown people. If you're claiming to be a Christian and yet you treat Black and brown people a certain way that's negative, then I would question your faith. And I've told, white audiences, like at a Christian college or somewhere where I'm speaking, Christian church, I was like, and this, like the most, because a lot of times whites will go into the hood to evangelize, and that's fine. But I say, look, the most evangelized place in the country, in America, is the black neighborhoods in the inner city or rural. Like I could go down to a Starbucks in Newark and strike up a conversation about God like that. I wouldn't even have to push it. Like I talk to a Muslim, I talk to a Hebrew, I talk to a Christian. That's just a part of our community's culture. Speaking about God and stuff. And I say, if you really want to help our brothers and sisters in the hood, help build some schools, some quality schools, help some economic issues, some better jobs, better access to jobs and things like that. And when you look in the book of Acts, whether it's chapter 2, chapter 4, the Christians in that time were helping one another economically and in other ways. And that actually was evangelistic because the people saw them sharing, caring for one another, helping other people. And they wanted a part of that. And it says they were adding people to the church daily. And so when you do good deeds for other people out of your faith in Christ, that actually is evangelistic. And that's one thing I would like to see the church in America do more of, because I think it would help Christians who are in tough economic situations. And it also would be a form of evangelism to those who are outside of the body of Christ.
Definitely. And, I really got to salute you with having that passion. And, we have similar passions as far as helping the community, like you said, through the fatherhood panels. I remember I was coaching my son's AAU team from my church, First Baptist Church of Glen Arden, Dynamic Disciples. I coached his AAU team. And you sent me the King hoodies for all of them. And they wore them with pride. And they were young cats, but they wore the hoodies. And, there was so much so that some of the other teams got jealous. They was like, hey, why do you get those nice hoodies? You know what I mean? So I really appreciated you doing that, because it's really instilling that in young men in particular, there's a certain set of issues that they have to be made aware of, like we were talking about, as far as making it plain to them, like, listen, you go down this road, you have to understand that you are not going to be judged like Johnny over here that does the exact same thing that you do, and making it plain to them. You know what I mean? Like you are judged by a different standard. It's not going to be the same thing. You're going to be in school. You're going to see little Johnny, throw a whole tantrum, get upset, kick over the table, whatever. But you roll your eyes at a teacher and they're going to try to suspend you. You know what I mean? Like you slip your teeth and especially if you stand up, then the teacher's going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm threatened by him. He threatened me and everything. I was like, that's something I had to deal with when I was younger, and growing up, and I know about it. So I've heard you talk to young people about that and trying to prepare them for what they're going to face in life. And on one hand, then on the other hand, what they're going to face in life as a Christian.
Right.
Because that's a whole different discussion as far as how you have to know what you're about, because the way that the enemy is going to try to attack you from all different angles, the older that you get, and you just instilling those things. And I really got to salute you, because it's a unique passion to have, and you do it with such passion.
Yeah, nah, man, I appreciate it. And that really is, like, I love my job in sports and enjoy what I do. I'm blessed to have it. It enables me to take care of my family. But my passion really is, spreading the word of God, helping people through Christ. And again, particularly our people, and our young men. And it's so important, that we do that, And yeah, it like you hit it. That's the right word, passion, because that's really what I want. And both of us, we've been blessed, and I really feel like when we've been blessed, we should use it as an opportunity to really help and give back to our community, particularly as African Americans, because as you said earlier, the system has a safety net for whites. And this system, it's just a fact, was built for white success. It was built for white people to have success. You can look at things like the Federal Housing Administration loans that were given during the 30s, 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, where they gave like $120 billion of, low interest mortgages loans to 98% of people that received them were white. And that's really one of the major things that built these nice white suburbs. And they had laws where blacks couldn't move into those suburbs. And in the meantime, they were redlining black neighborhoods, so just things like a lot of people don't know a lot of the things that were done in the past that have created the situations we see now. Because those things, you can't just say, well, the laws are, there's no like racism written into the laws now. Like racism isn't legal, let's put it that way. But we're still suffering from so many of the things that were done before. A lack of generational wealth, things like that because in the past you couldn't, it was hard for blacks to build generational wealth. You think about all of the black communities. We hear about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but there were like dozens of black neighborhoods like that throughout the country that were destroyed. And that was black people who had built up wealth, and now all of a sudden that was taken away. And so those families are still suffering to some degree from that today. And so, yeah, it's so important, to talk about these things. And I just feel like Etan, and I call you Etan. I know it's Etan.
It's all good. Yes, it's all good. It's all good.
But I just feel like we as African Americans really need to work together. And ideally we would create institutions, because I feel like the power to really make change is in institutions. Like we theoretically had the most powerful man in the world, Barack Obama as president of the United States. And yet, there were minor changes for the black community, And so I think if we have institutions, you look at the Jewish community, they have strong institutions so they can shut a lot of stuff down that they don't want going on and stuff like that. And I think we need to build up institutions. And that's one reason I respect you, because a lot of our, we look at young black boys who want to be professional athletes, and we say, oh, you can do so much more. And that's true. But the fact of the matter is, if you were to look at a list of the 10 wealthiest African Americans, not blacks worldwide, but African Americans, 7 of them probably, if not more, have made their wealth through sports or entertainment. You're talking about Oprah Winfrey Entertainment, Michael Jordan Sports, Tiger Woods Sports, Beyonce Entertainment. You can go on and on. And so our athletes and entertainers could really do a lot to build up our communities. But I think we're miseducated. Obviously there's the book by Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. And I think America educates its kids of all races to think me. I'm going to get mine. And for whites, that's fine, because again, the system protects them and has a safety net for them. Or they have connections that, they can. We know so many whites who weren't great students, or maybe who spent a time in jail or something. But when they get out, or they know somebody, they get them a job doing something, and we don't have that And I think when we come out of high school or college with a me education, that's not going to work for us to do. It might work for that individual, but us as a community. I mean, what I always say, what if Frederick Douglass or Harriet Tubman or Sojourner Truth or Richard Allen or Marcus Garvey or somebody like that had a me mentality? Malcolm X, you know, they were like, I want to help our people. And so I think that, like, you're using the fame and the fortune that you were able to get through sports to really help our people. And that's what I love.
I definitely appreciate it, and I you know, the respect is definitely mutual. One of the things that I was doing when I was doing my fatherhood panels after I wrote the fatherhood book, you know, President Obama at the time, but he appointed me as part of his fatherhood initiative. So he would do different events all throughout the country, and then later on he started My Brother's Keeper.
Yeah.
And My Brother's Keeper was an amazing, you know, institution that he kind of implemented all throughout the country, with the goal. And of course, he got the criticism of that from that. And he's, you know, they say, okay, well, why just black boys? You know, why just brown boys? And I think a lot of times people didn't understand the pushback that he got every single time he wanted to do something like My Brother's Keeper. And it was geared towards us, and it was really about uplifting our young men and preparing them and connecting them and setting them up for some, and not bashing them if they made a mistake or anything like that, but lifting them up. You know, one of the things that would really attract young men, you know, to the Nation of Islam is because they were, you know, they would take young black men, you know, clean them up, get them, set them on the right path, you know, instill a sense of pride, a sense of dignity, a sense of, you know, cultural awareness, where you are in society, how you have to walk up, all of these different things. And then that would gravitate, you know, a lot of young black men there. Well, what President Obama was doing with My Brother's Keeper, I saw it doing that. You know what I mean? All throughout the country. But then, of course, after he left office, you know, that everything wasn't kind of the same after that. But that's really an extension of what we're doing as far as uplifting our young men and preparing them for life and instilling them the principles and instilling them. I mean, you just had the event at my church, First Baptist Church in Glen and seeing the transformation of the young men after you left. You know what I mean? Because after you left, you did the event that weekend. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. You had speakers. You had, you know, Allen Houston speaking, and everybody, you know, knows Allen Houston, appreciated all the work that he did on the court with the Knicks. But then they got a chance to hear him speak and hear him talk about his journey and everything about that and what Christ means to him and where he places. And so afterwards, those young men were affected, you know what I mean, in a positive way and inspired. So with the work that you're doing, I'm seeing the results of it, and that's why I have so much respect for you, because it's such important work. Now you're looking to do that all across the country as you've been doing it, but even more. Talk about that you're doing as you're planning different events all across the country and connecting with churches in particular to do your events.
Well, one thing we've done in the past, and we want to keep doing in the future, is during the Super Bowl, we'll have an event at an HBCU in the Super Bowl city.
Okay.
And if they don't have an HBCU, we will find a high school or a community college or something like that. So we've done it, for instance, at Morehouse when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, at Florida Memorial University when the Super Bowl was in Miami. And we'll gather like hundreds of young men, usually students from the school, but also from the community. And to your point, we bring in some athletes or former athletes, a lot from the NFL because it's Super Bowl. And we speak about various issues: finances, career development, domestic violence, you know, avoiding that, faith, the importance of faith in your life, and things like that. So that's one thing. And I think men or boys need to see men like strong men And obviously athletes are physically strong and people admire them for that. And to see so many athletes, like even to see somebody like you, 6'9", dreads, you know, speaking about Christ and faith, that makes an incredible, you know, impact on these young boys. I mean, I think about, you know, now you know this, because I'm around athletes all the time, when I see some, it's not, you know, it's not as big of a deal. But I think back, and we can sometimes think about that. Well, when I see a professional basketball player, I'm not like all in awe. And you can kind of forget that the average person that doesn't see guys like this, maybe ever, to them, it is a huge impact. I think back, if I had been a young boy, maybe 3rd, 4th grade, and a professional basketball player came to my school and said, you stay in school and get your education.
Right.
As you get, like, I really would have remembered that. You know?
100%.
That would have like really have impacted me. So
let me tell you this. At my school, and it was just so interesting because I just ran into him last week at a charity event for OJ Anderson. Remember OJ Anderson used to play for the Giants? All right. Right. So I ran into John Starks on the golf course. Now, John Starks came and spoke to my middle school at Carver Middle School in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I remember it, you know, I knew his uncle was my PE teacher, Coach West. And so he brought him in there and spoke to all of us. And he also brought Wayman Tisdale. If you remember Wayman Tisdale, so he's from Tulsa as well. He went to the same high school that I went to, Booker T. Washington. John Starks went to Central, but it was still on North Tulsa. North side was the black side of town, across the railroad tracks. There's 3 main schools: Booker T. Washington, McLean, and Central. And so John Starks went to Central. So he came to my middle school. And when I tell you that he had all of our undivided attention, like I remember every single thing that he said. And I remember my teacher, Mrs. Cooper, for English, and she was great. And she said, you know, y'all, I didn't have to tell y'all to be quiet one time. I didn't have to tell y'all to pay attention to the speaker. Y'all were just locked in. Why y'all don't listen to us like that? Like, well, you're not John Starks, you know. that's what I told her. And then, you know, after he came and spoke to us, he had absolute diehard fans. You know what I mean? And you know, I grew up a Knicks fan and loved the Knicks. And when he had the dunk on Jordan and was in there, the lean in dunk, and you know, rooting for the Knicks all the time, like he had a fan. But it was the impact from him coming and speaking to us that one time, and his messages were all about, you know, do the right thing, you know, don't be swayed by gangs, because gangs was really big in Tulsa at that time, you know, and don't be swayed by gangs, and you know, want to go to college, and you know, different things that you're going to face, and working hard, and you know what it takes. And he told his story about how because he came up, he wasn't a player who was just a superstar from the time that he was young. He had a tough road where he had to really just work up from the bottom, basically. You know,
I remember the story. I mean, he was bagging groceries, right?
He was bagging groceries. I mean, sometimes that story gets a little bit exaggerated, but he was working in the grocery store, and he wasn't like hooping, but he had to do that to really get to, because you know, it's not like they didn't have NIL back then. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
brothers had to make ends meet when they went to college, and he was going to a JUCO, so they didn't have, you know, no money. So it was, but it was just that inspiration, that using his story as an athlete, what it did for us. So that's what got me wanting to, you know. And my mother was a teacher of Tulsa Public Schools. She used to have me come and speak to her students all the time when I just got to college. I was like, Mom, I ain't even done nothing yet. You know what I mean? I remember my freshman year, I was like, I didn't even really get no game time like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So why? But she was like, no, you're in college. Right. So what you're going to say is going to impact them. Right. So from that point on, I just kept doing it to where I'm, you know, doing the inspirational, motivational speaking now. But it's that to your point, you know, using athletes as the conduit to give those messages to young people, and for our young men, I can attest to it. It affects us, you know what I mean? Because you listen to athletes.
No question, man. And something else you said, you were talking about the Nation of Islam and how, you know, they've in the past and historically they've been able to impact Black men. And I think one of the great things, the strengths of that group is because my brother was in the Nation for like 9 years. And they walk strong in their belief. Like they walk like living a righteous life, which they promote, is the manly thing to do.
Right.
Like, of course I'm following God. Of course I'm living this way, you know. And they don't come off as envying those who are out there womanizing or selling drugs. You know, like they come at you like, man, you don't know who you are, brother.
Right.
Like, you know, why are you out here doing this?
Right.
And that's how men of God should carry themselves. You know, like we should, like Jesus walked with authority. You know, he didn't walk like, you know, hiding who he is, hiding what he believed, and afraid to talk about what he believed. He walked with authority, like I'm walking the way God I was created to walk.
Right.
And I think us as believers, we should walk like we're living like God created men to live. And those who aren't following Christ like we are, we have something to offer them that can take them to another level. You know, and so we should walk that way. And I think sometimes too many just they don't walk with that strength that God's called us to walk with. And that type of strength, like I said, we should walk that way. Like when Jesus preached, the Bible says the people would marvel because he spoke with authority.
Right.
You know, things like that. And so we should walk with the authority of knowing that the Almighty God and Creator is behind me and has my back, you know.
Right.
And so we try to do that as king. And like you said, that's how men should walk. And young boys want to be strong men. So if they see that example, it's really impactful on them.
You know, it's interesting. So we talk about how much we do with young men. And one of the things that happens for me, you know, I have 2 young daughters. And so baby Sierra, and I talk about her all the time, and Imani, now that they're both in high school now. I call her baby Sierra, but more, but that's just what I call her. And so, you know, I started getting in tune with the challenges that young girls have. And so to that point, this past WNBA All-Star weekend, I can tell you the quick story. I was approached by this group, this AAU organization. It was AAU. And they approached me and said that they wanted to, recruit me to come be a part of their organization and what they want to do moving forward and changing the culture of AAU. Because, you know, there's some toxic culture in AAU. If anybody has been to any AAU, you know what I mean, tournaments, there's some issues that they need to be cleaned up. You know, parents, oh my gosh, don't even get me started on how some of the parents behave. You got parents jumping the refs after the games. You got all kind of different stuff. It needs some work. Let's be honest. And so they're like, you know, they have this plan of wanting to do things across the country, doing these seminars and teaching coaches, because then you have some issues with some of the coaches who aren't teaching the fundamentals of basketball, but are only really focused on winning. But the way that it's set up with the shoe contracts is, the more that you win, the better it is for the Nike or Adidas or, whoever is sponsoring you. It is kind of like a mandate. So then it becomes win at all costs. Then you have different people passing off, older guys as 12-year-olds, to try to be able to get them more. Right. There's a lot that needs to be done with the AAU culture. So they recruited me to come out and be a part of their organization. They wanted me to sit on their board. And I was like, okay, I hear what you're trying to do. That all sounds great. They're like, okay, so we're going to have our big meetings during WNBA All-Star Weekend. They're like, we'll bring you out. you know, we'll have you be a part of the meetings. We'll introduce you to other people who are, you know, like-minded athletes. And they had, you know, a lot of different notable names that they were also pitching this to. So I was like, okay, this sounds good. And they were like, yeah, and we'll support you with your endeavors. And we know you like doing the motivational speaking. You have books and everything like that. So if you want to do a panel there or something like that. And I was like, yeah, you know, I usually do panels with young men. And they're like, yeah, we're aware. And, you know, show them the footage from different all-star weekends and you know, New York and Houston. And, you know, I mean, we just did one in Chicago, but right before COVID, big panel there. And it was they're all amazing, by the way. But so they were like, okay, yeah, that's great. That's great. Let's come on. Let's do it. All right, cool. Book my tickets. They got my stuff. They got the flight, the hotel, everything all set up and everything like that. So I started putting together the panel. And what I always do is I always connect with the church in the city. Right. So I connected with the church. Pastor Jenkins, my pastor for First Baptist of Glen Arden, introduced me to some pastors in Indiana, and I talked with them and settled on his church to be able to do the panel with. So, you know, they put the flyer together. You know, they say we'll bring all the young girls there because we'll do it just for young girls because it's WNBA All-Star Weekend. And I was going to have an all, you know, female panel and have all the different WNBA players there. I started reaching out to different people. They're like, oh, yo, this is great. Let me work on my schedule and see if I can, you know, the same way I do with the panels on All-Star Weekend, NBA All-Star Weekend. So we put together the flyer, and I showed it to them, and then it was like a silence. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get no response. I didn't get like, oh, this looks great. Oh, this. It was just kind of silence. Right. I was like, okay, this is different. Wow. Okay, because before, whenever I would text, and they text me right back. Okay, oh, that's great. Let's do this. So I sent the panel. It was silence for a few days. Now I was in the middle of my daughter's volleyball tournament, their nationals. So I started being busy with that. And anybody that knows travel volleyball, it's a whole different animal. Like when, like you were there from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. And it's like with, you know, games, and then they have to work the games that they don't play. It's a whole different animal. So some time went by. It was a few days, and I thought about. I was like, wait, they still ain't say nothing. And so I saw a mass email go out for all the different, you know, people that are doing different events that they're supporting, everything like that. So I look at it, and I didn't see my event listed. Wow. I was like, okay. I was further along with my event because I had an actual flyer. I had an actual, you know, plan at the place. Everything, you know, already set. And so I was like, huh, this is a little different, you know. So I reached out to them. I was like, hey, y'all didn't include my what's going on? Right. And so the brother, you know, was kind of like, oh, okay, let me call you back a little bit. It was, you know, one of those type of things. So I was like, all right, something's up, something's a little weird. I feel it. So, you know, I'm like, okay, can you call me back, you know, tomorrow or something like that? and then he was like, yeah, okay, I'll try to call you back, set the time. Wow. And so the time that we set, he didn't call me back. And so he called me a little bit later, and I picked up, and he was like, oh, hey. I was like, hey, you sound like you didn't expect me to answer. He was like, well, I remember you said you was busy at this time, so I was just going to leave you a message. I was like, all right, what's up? I was like, I can feel something's wrong. Right. And he was like, all right, man. He was like, well, I was like, well, why wasn't my flyer included with everybody else's? And he said, well, we're trying to figure out. Yeah, you know, he was kind of talking. And I was like, wait a minute, it's not making sense. I gave you my flyer, you know, a week and a half ago. You know what I mean? I told you what was set. I had already talked to different panelists. You know, we got everything set. And so I was like, what's up? There's something you're not telling me. What's going on? And he was like, all right. I didn't, well, you know, I was trying to work this out. And that's why I was kind of trying to avoid you a little bit with it. But, you know, the AAU people, they would rather you do the panel at maybe a different community center or a different, you know, a place. We have different things. You know, I'll shoot these two locations to you. So he shot it to me while I was talking, and I Googled it real quick, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a much smaller venue. Why would you the churches, and they're gonna bring all the young girls there and stuff? Right. This venue is like a fourth of the size of the church. Like, why would you want to do it here? I don't understand. And he was like, yeah, we've done something with them before, and I think they think that would be a better place. And he's trying to like,
so he's not giving you the real.
Not giving me the real yet. He's just trying to steer me there.
Right.
And so I clicked again, and they just had this big Pride event there, and I saw all the the rainbows, and you know what I mean. This big Pride event there, and I'm like, well, what? I don't understand, bro. There's something you're not telling me here. What's going on? And so he finally said, okay, they would rather it not be connected to a faith-based institution, but rather more something that was more inclusionary. They're using those kind of phrases. Right. And I was like, wait, you mean you don't want me to have it in the church? Is that what you're trying to say? I'm like, wait, using all these big words and stuff.
Right.
Said, you don't want me to have it in the church. And he was like, yeah. I was like, but I always do my panels in churches. I mean, I showed y'all the footage from when I did a panel with Osteen in Houston at a mega church fatherhood panel. It was packed with people actually with Alec Houston and D Wade. And, I showed you the panel at, you've seen all that footage. And he was like, yeah, we did see it. We just didn't think that you was going to do it, because in Chicago, you did it with a school. I was like, well, yeah, that was one place. But all the other footage that I gave you was all the churches. They were like, yeah, but we would rather you not do it for churches with churches. And I was like, why? You know what I mean? That's what I just asked. It's like, why? Right. It's like not like we're baptizing the kids and giving them the right hand of fellowship. Their parents were having a panel there. And he was like, I was like, oh, wait a minute. So you want me to separate myself from the church to do, because the sponsors that, that just started putting pieces together. I was like, wait a minute. So the sponsors that y'all have connected with the AAU organization and the WNBA, they don't want me to do it in the church. And I'm saying different like stuff like that. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. So you want me to separate, myself from Jesus to be able to work with your organization? Is that what you're telling? And I'm saying it all these different ways. And he was like, I wouldn't quite say it like that. I was like, bro, you just say it plain.
That's what it is, right?
I was like, all right, man. I was like, first of all, there's no way on earth I would do that. So I would just cancel everything and not be a part of the organization whatsoever, and all the different stuff that we talked about and planned. But there's no way that I am going to, separate myself from Jesus, separate myself from the churches, because this is what. And so we ended up having to cancel the whole event. Wow. So I was, I told the story on social media because I was like, I can't believe this happened. They want me to separate myself, and the different people. The comment section, they were like, oh, much respect to you for not selling out and not, because then another thing they sweetened the deal about what they would do if I would do it their way. So then they would, put this in with it. And I was like, well, wait a minute, that's not the point. I'm not. You're not gonna, get me, hook, line, and sinker by putting more into it. Like, we'll buy all of your books and give it to everybody. I was like, I ain't even asked for all that, but then we're gonna be able to. And I was like, so that I was frustrated because the whole event had to be canceled. I wanted to do that and impact these young girls, but not at that expense. I can't, just. This is like a week before the event was supposed to happen. You know what I mean? Wow. So that aspect of it is, and I'm sure you've ran into things of that nature where people want you to separate yourself from the spiritual aspect, the Christian aspect, the fact that you do it and how do you deal with that? Because I was so frustrated, you know what I mean? Right. I was hot, and I was just kind of surprised. I was like, I don't understand why you would have this issue, but how do you, because I'm sure you've dealt with this before, how do you deal with something like that?
Well, first of all, I applaud you for taking your stance and standing up strong. And that's kind of what I was talking about when I brought up like the Nation of Islam example. Mm-hmm. You stood tall, you know what I mean? And said, no, this is who I am. I'm not separating from it. I'm not selling out, if you will. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, we do. And I'm saying, if you want to have the Black community help you, or you want to do something in the Black community, or you want to get the support of the Black community, a large part of our community is about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want, you don't come into our community or get us to help you and then ask us to take that element of our life out, leave that out.
Right.
And we are, our country is about diversity and pluralism. And part of that is accepting us for who we are,
right,
which is followers of Christ. You know what I'm saying? So I applaud you for that, man. In fact, I don't know if you saw it. I'm sure you've heard of Kai Cenat.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, this one of the top influencers out there, with social media. So he had a deal with Nike. And I don't really watch Kai. I mean, I know of him and I see little clips here and there.
My kids know them. I don't really know them, but my kids, they all know who he is. Exactly. Yeah, right.
But he apparently at times, like, he really talks a lot about Jesus too. And he's done that since he started, and he's become huge and all that. And so he had to deal with Nike. And this is just within the last few weeks.
Okay.
They wanted, according to him, Nike wanted him to stop talking about Jesus on his podcast.
Really?
Or his, whatever, social media. Yeah. And he did a podcast or video about it and said that Nike wanted him to do this. And he said, he's like, all money ain't good money.
Right.
And he ended his relationship with Nike.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, man. And so who knows how many people that could impact, by seeing that. So I salute you. I salute him for what he did. And it's interesting with me because I've been outspoken for a while, for many years now. As you know, like, that's kind of become part of my brand, as being a Christian, like when I had the radio show with Rob Parker, I know you had him on recently. Yeah. That was like part of the whole title was The Odd Couple, like one guy's in church, one guy's in the strip clubs, what I mean? And
right.
all that.
Right.
And so it's been good because people, like, they just know off the bat that that's what I'm about. And so it's made it recently. I mean, it's just, people just kind of know that, right. So that's understood. But one of the things that inspired me in my boldness was, as you know, I'm in the Black history and stuff. And I looked at Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner and all of these great, David Walker, great African-American freedom fighters. And obviously they fought for Black people, but the overwhelming majority of them were really about Jesus. And Nat Turner, Marcus Garvey, we could go on and on. And they were bold about their faith and about helping Black people at a time where it could cost you your life.
Right.
And so I've said, man, if they could be that bold then, how can I not be bold now? When, I mean, you might get ostracized. Like you say, you might lose a deal with a company or whatever. But for the most part, we're not, going to lose our lives or something.
Right.
So I'm like, they could be bold in much tougher times. How can I not be bold now? And so that's really one of the things that led me to really be bolder in my faith. And even in, speaking about African-American upliftment and things like that, is looking at those heroes from the past and seeing how they did it. And I just think in our politics and whatever it is, like, we as African-Americans have a lot of power, and we could impact either. Obviously, most African-Americans are Democrats and vote Democrat. We could have a huge impact on that party if we said, look, these are our beliefs. We support you in this, and this and stuff, but these are our beliefs too. So we got to get some support there too.
100%.
And so I love what you've done. And again, like I said, I gotta shout out Kai Sanat because that's great.
No, that definitely, and you talked about that. I interviewed you in my book. Actually, it's right over my shoulder here. The
Yeah.
police brutality and white supremacy, the fight against American.
I love that cover too, man.
It's tough, right? But one of the things we talked about is the level of the history of racism and white supremacy and the misusing of the Bible and misusing of the Word of God and Jesus's lessons and what he taught that happened historically in this country.
Yes.
But then also making the distinction, because we also interviewed Bishop Talbot Swan, and there, he don't pull no punches at all.
I know how he came.
I know, but making the distinction that what you see now that's not representation of Christ. Right. You know what I mean? What you see from the MAGA Christians and what they're the proponents that they're fighting for, that's not Christ-like. That's not what Christ taught us. But hearing prominent Black men say that, have that stance, and if that's inspirational for younger Black men and younger Black girls who are trying to see where they fit in society, to somebody that speaks to their their needs, their struggles in the bigger society as a whole, and plus speaks to the spiritual side. And one of the things that we have had a disconnect, and that's why I have so much respect for you, is you are bold, and you keep using those words, is bold in your faith, and not gonna go, you know what I mean, and not gonna put you in a closet and tell you to be quiet and stuff like that, or put your faith to the side in order to be able to do this. But you're bold and you walk in your face, and you talk about, you're gonna point out the ills of society and the issues that are facing our people and what we have to fight against, and you're gonna talk about the racism that is permeating throughout the society, and also you're going to talk about Jesus and what that means. And that's the part that was missing for a while, because that's the part that the nation did. You know what I mean? They spoke to all of those elements, so then they started attracting so many young Black men there. But this is what you're doing right now in Christianity, and that's why it's so special. So I want to keep doing things with you. And I talked to you about All-Star Weekend coming up in LA, and we have maybe we could combine and kind of combine what we've been doing and do something together out there, under the guise of the kingdom. You know what I mean? And pushing and what we both do, because it's right along the same page of what you do with the King movement, right? And really do something special, but not have to be beholden to somebody else like AAU that wants to put us and put our beliefs on the side in order for them to, but we can support ourselves. Since then, since I sold that on social media, I've had about literally a dozen different churches and organizations reach out to me and say, hey, you can be a part of, if you ever want to bring your program and do something with my church here, churches in Texas, churches in, you know what I mean? All these different places, Miami, different Charlotte, and reached out to me and said, oh, we would love to do something with you, because we saw you speak so boldly. Yeah, all you speak, and that's something that our young people need. So I want to connect with you, because I love what you do, and I have so much respect, because this is the thing, it's hard sometimes for people to stand bold in their faith. Yes, and they get rewarded for, like they were going to reward me for putting their faith to the side, and now we're going to give you all this, right? You know what I mean? In order so they get bought. Right. There you go. I'm not for sale. Nah, man, that's so awesome, and you right on the money. And like you said, it's so important to speak, the full counsel of God. Right. Because like you said, you see the MAGA Christians or whatever, and they are, like you talked about the church in the past. Like, America really wasn't founded obviously on Christian principles. No, because of the way they treat people of color. Right. It really was founded on white supremacy with little sprinklings of Christianity on top of it, And the Bible talks about people will twist and pervert the gospel. It talks about how people will teach another Jesus. Like in Galatians, Paul talks about
they're teaching another Christ, and that's another Jesus. You know, just because somebody says Jesus doesn't mean they're preaching the biblical Jesus as Lord and Savior.
Right.
And so it's important to, because, you know, like right now, if you look at the situation with immigrants, and we understand, you know, you do have to have a way for people to come into the country and all that. Sometimes you might have to cut off the borders, whatever. But when immigrants are here, the Bible talks about in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, Exodus, of treating the foreigners that are in your land, strangers or foreigners, it calls them. It says treat them like you would treat the rest of the members of your society. Treat them like you treat yourself. You know, so you have, even as you may want to try to get this situation under control, you still have to treat immigrants with respect.
Right.
And you're not breaking up their families, and you know what I mean? And now, you know, you see a lot of just going up to like Hispanics, period, in California, and just, you know,
snatching them up.
Yeah. And so that is something where these Christians on the right should speak up against.
100%.
Because it's biblical. Like, Etan, if they did that, it would, that again, I talked about helping people economically and education, how that could be evangelistic. That would be evangelistic.
100%.
Because it shows that you're not, whether they've obviously, some of them voted for Trump, but it shows we're more about the truth. We're more about following Christ than we are about following this man. And I really feel like the church and the body of Christ, we should be above the political parties. And, you know, you vote for one or the other or somebody else, but you can talk about what each is doing right, but you have to talk about what each is doing wrong too. Regardless of who you voted for, which party you support, we should not be, I was telling somebody the other day, this weekend, we were having a discussion. I said, I want two labels. I said, I want the label of being a Christian, a follower of Christ, and being black.
Right.
Them the only two labels I really need.
I got you.
Labeled as a Democrat. I don't need to be labeled as a Republican or left wing, right wing. Like, that's label me like that. I mean, I could go into father and, you know,
right.
I hear you. Those two, that's the only thing you need to label me by, you know. And so yeah, man, it's but you know, obviously, man, we gonna keep doing work together, and because we need, you know, and you talked about having daughters, and you know, daughters, the fatherless crisis, we focused on the past about the boys that lack their fathers, but it hurts the girls too.
Oh, tremendously. Yes. It's in a different way, and it manifests itself in differently. You know what I mean? But tremendous impact on young girls. Like, I can't even say, and the plight with raising, you know, teenage girls who have a desire to follow Christ. You know, that's a hurdle in itself, but the way that they are bombarded from every angle, and not even talking, you know, we didn't have social media when I was growing up. So we didn't have access to everything. Like, everything wasn't just bombarded as soon as we put on our phone. We didn't have no phones. You know, I didn't grow up with no phone in high school. The only place I saw a cell phone was Nino Brown, New Jack City, and then Zach Morris, the Saved by the Bell. Other than that, there was no such thing as I didn't see no cell phones in high school. You know what I mean? So it's completely different. But what they're bombarded with, you know, every single time they pick up their phone, the images, the self images that affect their self-worth, and you know what it means to be a young lady, and you know the image that they're shown through hip-hop, which is the same negative images that we were shown, you know, through hip-hop as well, with, you know, Lil Kim, Foxy Brown, all through hip-hop. Those are the images that were pushed, while you have positive sisters, you know what I mean, that aren't pushed at all. You know, so I'm playing different people for them, and they're like, we don't ever hear them unless you play them. You know what I mean? So like Rhapsody, Ciroc, they love Lauryn Hill, but they don't hear Lauryn Hill, you know, played on the radio. They don't hear, you know, Ciroc at all. and
Yeah.
you know, Rhapsody, and they could spit. You know, I got them in the
Oh, yeah.
late when they was younger, and all these different, you know, talented female artists. But what they're shown and what is promoted is ratchet.
Yeah.
That's what they're promoted. Act like this. Act like Sexy Red. Act like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? All these different people that are doing all, and it's, you know, that's a whole different hour once you start talking about girls. But the point is that we have a lot of work to do, and I definitely want to connect with you. I want to do something at All-Star Weekend. You said that you do stuff at the Super Bowl. Those big events where we have young people's attention, where everybody is focused there. Those are key events to do.
Absolutely.
Do different events. And so, yeah, let's keep this going and keep planning. And you know, I've got a lot of respect for you. I mean, it's going on. I was looking at this one video from when I played in your charity weekend. Remember, I got the MVP.
Yeah, you were dunking on everybody.
I mean, it was cool, but it was like, you know, like Mark Lamont Hill's my man, but he a little guy. You know what I'm saying? So it was all these cats that were playing, but you know, they're not like basketball size. You know what I'm saying? Like NBA basketball size. So,
right.
But just everything that you was doing with that though, and the impact that you make, let's combine and let's do some of this work and walk together, because you know, one thing that I like that you do, you know, you're combining with different like-minded men who want to do the work in different places. Right. I mean, when I, you know, and it was definitely honored for you to, you know, give me the award at your event here, and you know, have an honorary member. But what you're putting up, the entire ceremony, you know, it was like the black fraternities, but it was also but it was Christian, and you were, you know, the elements. And I wish everybody could see it in the way that you. Maybe when I run this as we're talking, I could show some of the footage of how you're doing. And it was honestly, it was amazing. And they take a pledge to, you know what I mean, be men of Christ and to do well in their community and to, you know, go out and be their brother's keeper and that was beautiful. Like that is something that, you know, it duplicated in as many cities, and I definitely would be honored to be a part of it. So let's keep it going, man.
Yeah, man. Quickly on that, I know we got to wrap up, but as you know, and this actually goes for churches across racial lines, but it might be more prominent in some of the black churches. But a lot of times the church has been effeminized, you know, because it's mostly women in the church,
right?
You know, this is years ago. I read this, but at one point it was like in the black church, it was 3 to 4 women for every 1 man.
Oh, wow.
And that's overall. You do have church like Glen Arden has a lot of men, but you know, in a lot of churches, it's that ratio. And it was like in the Nation of Islam, it's like the reverse.
Right.
3 to 4 men for every 1 woman. And so what you saw in our crowning ceremony, that's a masculine form of worship. You know, you have brothers, we marched in. One of our brothers was in the military, so there was a little militaristic parts of it, elements of it, but it's masculine. And we've actually at times we've had women at that ceremony cry because they saw their husband or fiance or something making a commitment, a public commitment to Christ in the presence of other men who are going to encourage him and also hold him accountable. And so it's a powerful thing. Like you look in the Bible, there's no lack of men of God. There's no dearth of men. It's like there's women that serve the Lord, of course, too, but it's not like it's overwhelmingly female and you can't find men of God.
Right.
Well, there are men of God all over the Bible. And so we need to present Christ as men in a masculine way. And I don't know if you know Justin Giboney, who runs the AND campaign. I should get you in touch with him because he'd be great for the podcast.
Okay.
But the AND campaign is about Christians, you know, standing for biblical values in the political realm.
Okay.
And I think he was a lobbyist at one point, but he's a member of King, and he had a great saying. He said, look, not toxic masculinity,
Right.
not effeminization, but Christ.
Right.
Like, so if you look at Jesus, you saw things we associate with traditional masculinity. He was a carpenter. He ran the money changers out of the temple. Like, when he had to be about it, he could be about it, right?
Right.
He also was compassionate. He looked at the multitudes of his people suffering and had compassion on them.
Right.
You know, he wept when his friend Lazarus died.
Yep.
So, like, that's masculinity.
Right.
You know, being able to take care of yourself and your family, you know, but also having love and compassion. And he was even had love with his boys, you know, with his disciples, you know, hugs and stuff like that. And so that's really what we try to represent in King. And so, yeah, man, we that's what young men need to see too, because being a man of God, it actually doesn't take away your masculinity. It enhances it.
Right.
You know, and makes you more of a man. And that's what we want to present. So,
man, well, much respect to you. And like I said, we're going to keep supporting each other. And, you know, I'm serious about doing something in All-Star Weekend and in Super Bowl weekend, if that's what you're doing as well. But let's keep doing it. And hey, keep being bold and keep doing, you know, like I said, we ain't talking one drip of basketball or sports or something like that this whole hour. You know what I mean? Right. But what you're doing is so important and it's so needed. And like I said, that ceremony that I witnessed, it was so special. So I want to be a part of it. So everything you have going forward, you know, count me in, and let's just keep pushing this and keep working together.
Thank you, brother, man. Keep up the great work you're doing on the radio show, your podcast, obviously in the community. And we will wrap, you know, we'll be in touch. We obviously always in touch. So yeah, man, this was great. I know we could go on for hours.
We could, yeah, definitely.
It's warm, but I think
right. We just kind of warm it up, right?
Right.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, well, thanks for coming on the Rematch. Definitely appreciate it. And we'll keep talking. Keep doing your thing, brother.
All right, brother. You too, man. Peace.
All right, peace.
All right.